Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of WCM Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks, here with our regular hosts, Cara Braeutigam from the Canadian Camping and RV Council, and Mr. Ben Quiggle, the esteemed editor of the most popular campground magazine for campground owners that exists at woodallcm.com, if it ever existed. So we're lucky to have him here. And then we've got a bunch of really cool guests here this week to talk about best hiring practices. And so I think we're going to go around and let everybody just kind of briefly introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here and why you think you contribute to the discussion. And then we'll get going from there. But before, I always forget to do this too, Ben. I always have to say, if you're watching on Facebook, please leave us a comment. We'd love to get you involved and engaged in the show. If you're watching on the Woodalls Facebook page, the Canadian Camping and RV Council Facebook page, Insider Perks, several places. If you comment, it'll show up here. And then remember, too, that we are now a podcast, and we're on YouTube Live, so you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, a bunch of places like that. So just didn't want to forget that. But go ahead, guys. Introduce yourselves.
And it's pretty exciting being distributed as a podcast. Now you guys can just hear my voice and you don't actually have to see my face, which is like kind of the best of both worlds. So I've been told I have a voice that puts people to sleep. So I mean, you could really just play the podcast while you're trying to go to sleep. So that works for everyone.
Did your wife really tell you that, or are you just making that up?
No, actually, it was who? It was somebody from. No, it was when we were at the Canadian conference, and we were doing that thing. You guys told me that my voice was monotone, and I put people to sleep. So somebody did. I don't know if Cara or Brian. Somebody did. Anyways. But anyways, I'm really excited about today's topic because, we have a lot of hiring issues in the industry, and it's great to have the guests we have here. So let's let them introduce themselves, I guess. We'll just start with Steve, I guess. Just kind of introduce yourself and what you do.
And just a note here before Steve goes. If you guys can put your names in, they'll show up like Mark, Ben, Cara, and Brian all do. If you put your names in and hit save. I don't know why they're not showing up for some of you, but go ahead, Steve, please.
I tried to put my name in. No luck. Steve Stafford, general manager here at North Texas Jellystone Camp Resort here in Burleson, Texas, we're just south of Fort Worth, and so I've been here GM for 11 years now.
Welcome.
So what, and thank you for introducing yourself, but what do you feel like you're going to bring to the conversation for our viewers today, Steve?
I'm going to focus on hiring international students or J1 students. I think is what I was asked to present today, and my thoughts on that. Happy to do it.
Yeah, plus, I mean, Steve hires a ton of people down there. I don't know if he's with North Texas Jellystone. I don't know if for those of you who are familiar with the park, you realize that's a huge park which probably hires tons of people every summer. It's a water park and a campground, and they're adding more. So I imagine you have some comments on that end too. So
we have, in the summer, we'll have about 400 employees.
Yeah, so he's got to hire a lot of people. So, so I guess Mark, just kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. So my wife and I own Woodstock campground in Woodstock, Ontario, Willow Lake Campground. We bought it about 4 years ago. It's an award-winning park over the last few years. We're a small park, so only about 100 sites, including year-round residents, small amount of seasonal, and a bunch overnight. But I guess where my background comes from is I'm previously, before this life, my corporate life was as a director of human resources, worked for both Lowe's Canada. I've worked for Walmart. I've worked for Home Depot, worked for Indigo and chapters in Canada. I've done a lot of hiring, whether it's me personally doing hiring or the teams I had. But as an HR director, it was we did a lot of that.
Yeah. So, and then I guess Luis, just kind of give us your background a little bit and what you do.
Okay, my name is Louise Becquet, and I are
You're breaking up a little bit, Louise. Is it just me,
Same
or is it
thing.
everybody else?
Yeah.
You what?
You're just breaking up a little bit. You're
The
fading in
volume?
and out. It was just me. Yeah, I think it's maybe your internet is just a little bit off.
Yeah.
While she works on it,
The
Cara, do you
internet
know
is
enough to
okay
introduce
here.
her, or-
Sorry.
I just said, while she works on it, do you know enough to tell us who Louise is, and then she can fill in the details?
Well, I don't know offhand the name of Louise's park, but I really felt like she would fit well in this conversation just because she's involved with the orchestration of a Canadian work campers Facebook group that facilitates connecting with campground operators and managers and stuff, specifically with work campers, which I think I know when I was running a park was a big factor in my kind of hiring strategy every year and kind of figuring out where my team was going to come from, which, I think this conversation is timely for. I was typically getting ready for the summer and building my team right around this time each year. So, I'm excited to dive in.
So the name of her park is Paradise Valley Campground.
Thank you, Ben.
And her Facebook group is the Canadian Work Campers Group.
Yes.
So which is pretty neat. I know we have a number of work camper groups here in the U.S. That do a lot for work campers. So it's going to be kind of cool to touch on that area as well, because I know we have a lot of questions from park owners about how to use work campers, how to hire them. It's not quite the same as hiring a regular employee when you're dealing with a work camper. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cara. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I feel like we've got some internet lag stuff happening. There's a lot of factors involved with hiring a work camper that you have to kind of take into consideration with compensation and things like that. So,
So I think what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you guys, is just start stage by.
I'm still breaking out.
You're a little bit better, but yeah, we just have some lag here. I think that's all.
First one in Canada.
I think what we'd like to do or what is maybe a good idea, since we've got Cara, who's a former park owner, we've got Mark, who's currently one, Steve, who is a general manager, Luis, who is one. Just kind of go around and tell us some of the challenges that you faced first with hiring, or did face, Cara, in your case, and then maybe we can kind of come up with practical solutions to those issues, give some advice, and then we can obviously take some comments from people as well. Cara, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, the biggest hurdle in terms of hiring and getting the team orchestrated was the seasonality of our business. So, we build a great team for the summer, and then in the fall, everybody kind of was laid off and went and did their own thing. And then we're kind of restarting each year. And lots of times I had some returning staff, but there's always this big hurdle for me to leap over and overcome getting my team orchestrated in time for opening April 1st.
Does anybody hear the rattling behind somebody's audio? Is that just me?
No, I'm hearing it too.
Yeah, I hear it too.
Is somebody typing, or I don't know?
I don't think anybody's typing. So,
I'm just making sure I wasn't crazy. So go ahead. There's a little pecker thing behind us. I don't know. Okay, go ahead. Though, Steve, please tell us some of the challenges that you face as a general manager with 400 plus employees. They have to be significant, I would imagine. Did we lose Steve? Is he frozen?
Yeah,
I think at the beginning it was getting the word out that we were hiring. And so
There he's back.
first
Okay.
we were attending, going to high schools. We were going to high schools and setting up booths, working with guidance counselors. As time went on, it was fun. It got to be work. And so friends were sharing with other friends, hey, what are your plans for the summer? I'm working at Jellystone. I'm working at the water park, whatever it may be. And so now we don't have to go out in the community and do those, but we So at the beginning, it was tough. I think, if your retention rate is pretty good with your employees, mouth is a huge help for especially if you have good ones. We try to tell hey, do you have any friends just like you? And can you bring them to work at the park? So that was probably at the beginning. That was tough. How do you do that? The newspaper ad. Again, depending on type of hiring you're looking for. For us, it was mainly college students because we're mainly seasonal. I mean, we're open year round, but the beginning was tough. But we would visit the schools. I say we. That meant somebody else besides me.
So Steve, you guys are open year round, correct? Or
Yeah.
do you guys hire more staff during the summer months and then you kind of lessen the staff during the winter months, or how does that work?
Yeah, Ben, that's a good question. Most of their, like I said, college or high school students, so they're going back to school. So it's just a natural release, if you would. So they leave on their own. And we hire them on their contract saying that it's seasonal. And we'll pick up some teachers as well that want part-time work during the summer. And then, holidays, Christmas vacations, Thanksgiving, spring break. Some of these students that are on break will come back and work for us at that time. So, but we do hire the adult population as well in certain areas, but usually again word of mouth right now.
Okay. Yeah. I guess, Mark, what's the challenges you face at your park, I guess?
Yeah, I guess our first challenge when we opened the park or when we bought the park, I mean, the park's got an 80-year history, but it had been kind of run down, and a lot of people had thought it had gone out of business. So our first challenge was, well, first of all, learning how to run a campground and figuring out if we needed people. Then it was about becoming known in the community, like letting folks know that, hey, Willow Lake we're back and we're in business to be a fun place to camp. And then from there, once we kind of got into the community, it was also about reaching out and saying, and we're looking for staff. We're being a small park, we have a limited number of staff. So for us, it was so important to find the right individuals, because often if I'm off fixing a tap and Melanie's off doing some electrical work, this person's representing our park. So finding that one perfect person or two was so important. So once we kind of got our name out, that helped. But we also worked with our seasonals and our residents as well to say, similarly, hey, do you know somebody? Have you got somebody that you'd be able to recommend? And then sort of going through that delicate balance of, interviewing friends of friends, and then, the decision, do you hire them or do you not? And if you don't, there's a bit of a ripple effect there. But it was just as much about getting our park known as a place that's an employer anymore. So.
Right. How big is your team, Mark? Oh, sorry, Ben.
Oh, nope. You go ahead, Cara.
I was just going to ask Ben, Mark, how big is your team? How many staff do you have?
Last year we only had one individual, so it was myself, Melanie, and then the one seasonal employee. Kind of with COVID, we weren't sure that we'd even need anybody, but we were fortunate to have been successful in one of the Canadian federal grants for the summer jobs programs. So we had the funding there, so we figured, well, let's bring the person on board anyways. And it ended up being a great year, so it was important to have that person. So this year we're sort of deciding, is it one more, is it a couple more? But yeah, generally speaking, it's not a big team.
Right.
Yeah. I liked what Cara had mentioned about the seasonality of the business. And I know, like, down in the southern part of the U.S. that it's not quite a seasonal. I think, with the parks being open, they can offer more full-time jobs year round. But, up in the northern section, that seasonality definitely plays into it. And I imagine up in Canada, it's just difficult to keep employees when you're talking only so many months out of the year, then they have to go find something else to do. I have heard of like places trying to do different things to engage their workers during the winter months. I guess, have you guys heard anything like that where they're doing like, they try to do different things at the park to try to keep their workers busy throughout the year?
I mean, we did some things. I was able to keep, one or two on through the winter because we were offering RV storage and things like that. But our operating permit, the county that we operated in limited how much RV storage we could take and things like that. It just wasn't a ton of workload that that I couldn't handle since I was there anyway. So it was really just kind of one person to spell me off or whatever. But the biggest thing was like incoming reservations and admin stuff and catching up on stuff that really only I could do. Or maybe that's wrong. Maybe it was stuff I only thought I could do. I did it to myself.
Guilty of that too. So
yeah, but but I like I said, I was able to keep one or two through the winter, which did certainly help because then by the spring, I had a couple of, somebody on my team who I could really trust and rely on to help me get everybody trained and ready to go in time for, opening day. And then typically, I mean, we saw, my full team wasn't assembled usually until June, which timed out good with, when we were the busiest. But for sure, we were spending a ton of time. The last 2 weeks of March were typically training time, even for staff who would get laid off in the fall and then come back in the spring. They've been off for 6 months or whatever. We'd do a training refresher with those guys too. So that stuff was a big undertaking, the training part itself.
Yeah, definitely. I know down here in the U.S. too, we have a lot of competition. I hear from campground owners all the time about how they just, they have job openings, but they can't get anybody to fill them because of the job market. And I think COVID kind of did some different things too, as far as people wanting to work and things like that. So I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about was how do these park owners entice people to come work with them, I guess. Mark, you have experience in HR. I guess what types of things do you think what types of things do you think park owners could do to kind of entice people to take a second look at working at their parks, I guess?
Well, I think it's important to be, an active part of your community, because if you're viewed as a contributor to your community, and whether it's partnering with nonprofit organizations or doing fundraisers or barbecues or whatever, those things you do throughout the year are important in creating that relationship with the people in your area who are your potential employees. I think the brand and how you market yourself is so important because like everybody says, there's a lot of competition out there. And whether you work at Willow Lake or you work at a Starbucks, I mean, people have a lot of options. But if they know of Willow Lake as a fun place, a great place for families, a place that does events, all that kind of stuff, those are the things that are above and beyond that I think can excite people. Because, I mean, we're a small town of 40,000, but, they could go work at McDonald's, and Ontario minimum wage is around $15 an hour right now. So, it's not about the wage, because you can't really get much more competitive in that arena.
Yeah.
So, letting folks know that, hey, we're an outdoor employer, you're going to get so many responsibilities that at many times you're going to look like you're the owner of the park, because you're going around delivering firewood and shaking hands and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's that reputation and the brand you build is so important, because there becomes a point when you don't even have to go look for folks. They're knocking on your door. They're on your Facebook page saying, hey, are you hiring this summer? And it just saves you a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess, Steve, what do you do at your park to kind of to kind of attract people? Obviously, you're a huge employer in the area.
Yeah, unfortunately for us too, we're right on the main highway, freeway. So those things, using your social media channels is definitely is also a good way to do that. Now hiring, those signs out front. We have a big LED sign on the highway that we have now hiring as well. And word of mouth, retention of past staff. We've had some that started off early years of high school, maybe freshmen, or now in college, been with us 4 or 6 years. And so, just all of those avenues or platforms, anything you can use out there. And I think it's good to, not just hiring, but hiring smiling faces, hiring smiling, energetic, positive people, those type of things too, to kind of get it going. And we tend to probably overhire at the beginning, knowing that we'll probably release some, as the season starts, because either it wasn't what they thought it was, it wasn't the Baywatch, feel of lifeguarding. They saw it in movies or something. So that's just part of the process. We try to take an attitude. We've heard and I come from an education background. We've heard of teaching hospitals, for example.
Yeah.
Why not? So we try to look at ourselves as a teaching park, right? So some of these are their first time having a job, and they don't come knowing how to count back money or knowing how to interact with a guest unless they text them, right? So there has to be some training and education that comes along with that. You just don't hand them a weed eater and tell them go to it. So we realize that coaching is very important before you put them behind a cash register, making ice cream, being a lifeguard, or any of those things too. So that training is important.
I can't imagine
like I said, most likely they have not learned it at home.
Absolutely. I can't imagine the monumental, building a team that big. I know for me, I was typically had about 12 to 15 staff each season. And that kind of gave me the ability to be pretty choosy. Like I usually
had anything. Am I supposed to be?
Sorry, is my audio?
Oh, no, I hear you, Cara. Yeah, I think it's just maybe keep the speakers down.
So I used to, get 25 or 30 applicants to fill those 12 or 15 positions. So I could be quite choosy about, like Steve said, picking those smiling faces and picking certain personalities and things like that. And the idea of hiring 400 people blows my mind. I can't even fathom filling that quota.
Yeah, I have to imagine on some end you're almost have hiring ads up all the time for 400 plus employees, but
well, it depends on what the turnover rate is too, right? I mean, it sounds like it's a good training program in place and stuff like that. I mean, I'll wade into one of the bigger controversial topics that I'm sure we can touch on here in a little bit, at least from my opinion. That's like, you have to pay your staff well and give them benefits if you want to attract the right staff. There's not a lot of park owners, I don't think this is widespread, but I know some park owners who insist on $9-10 an hour, and that's all I'm going to pay somebody. Now, it depends on the job, obviously, that they're doing, right? What you want to pay them. But if you want quality, you've got to pay for quality, is the way I run my business. So things like benefits help attract, Mark is thinking about how do I attract the workers and stuff like that, be involved in my community, but also be known as that employer who takes care of your employees too. There are lots of ways that you can save on margin in other areas of your business. Personally, for me, running my business, employees are the one I don't want to save on because I want to have the best.
Right.
think,
There's impacts there with seasonality and stuff too. It can be really difficult to offer seasonal employees a benefits package. There's not a ton of options out there and from benefits providers that can function in that type of short-term benefits window. So you have to kind of get creative with stuff. We did stuff that kind of maybe the dynamic is a bit different. Our minimum wage is over $15 an hour here. So I think that's different. And
I'm sorry, but I can't hear anybody talking.
Aw, yikes. I apologize, Steve.
yeah, I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know what would be causing that.
It's got to be his speakers have got to be off. That's all, or maybe they're just not selected right. I'm sorry, Steve. I wish I could.
Yeah,
help.
We can apologize till the cats come home. We can't hear
I don't know. Should I try to go in and out?
Yeah, check your thing.
Yeah, try to go in and out, Steve. You can try that. So, but let's. Did we talk to Luis about?
Yeah, so I was actually going to just ask. So, Luis, how many people are on your team? Luis, how many staff do you hire in a season?
I'm hoping you can hear me well this time.
Much better.
We are ground, and oh, good. And we only hire 5 couples sites. Usually, mostly people that retired, and on top of the benefit of the being paid, they get stay, electricity, water, and sewer.
Right.
What we're looking for is people that have a life behind them and get some, the quality that we're looking for, that they hands-on, kind of blue collar people that can know how to get a hammer or clean a toilet already in the past.
Yeah.
A different side of people, because we don't stay here all year round. It's just people that come in and out. Like we get 2 days, 3 days, people that come in Germany. We get a different, I would say, clientele than a lot of our campground.
I'm just going to move to another room, see if I have
We're
better
looking
connection.
for in all different social media.
Oh, we lose Luis again.
It's frozen again. Yeah. Shoot. It's one of those Mondays this week.
I think it's just interesting because you mentioned, Brian, the quality of the benefit packages and everything. And I think, on the work camper side, I wish Luis could talk a little bit more about this, but on the work camper side, I think we're starting to see more demands for that. I know work campers are expecting, I think, a little bit more in return for their work.
I used them quite a bit. I typically had 1 or 2 members of my team each year who were technically a work camper who kind of lived on site and, in their RV or whatever. And part of their compensation package included, the use of that site and their power, water, and sewer. So it was a way to, like Brian suggested, offer kind of a benefit in addition to their earnings, that really, it increases their availability to you, right? And I typically found with my work campers, especially, even if they aren't on shift, like if they see something, because they're in the park all the time, if they saw something or whatever, they just were kind of always good champions for the business because they were so present all the time, which was great. And typically those were the ones that I saw return each year. So, a lot of my staff would turn over after the fall and go do other things for the winter, maybe not come back, but our work campers would typically go down south, head to Arizona, enjoy the winter, come back all tanned. And one gentleman, I think he did 22 straight seasons like that. So wow. For long before I was owner there, he had already every winter he and his wife went to Arizona. They would come back in the spring, And he used to always joke with me because he'd get back all tanned, but about 20 pounds heavier than when he left. And he'd come in and pat his belly and be like, "It's time to get back to work now." And he literally just mowed grass and did incredible landscaping work. He wasn't interested in the customer service side, but the man kept the place spotless and beautiful. He was incredibly valuable to me. And the dynamic just worked really, really well. And he was happy to come do that because he got his exercise in and took his 20 pounds off and got to be outside all summer and it didn't cost him a cent. And I paid him an hourly wage. Like, he was happy and enjoyed the dynamic was really great. I mean, frankly, that campground probably wouldn't have existed without that man, frankly. So
Yeah.
But that speaks to, right, that he can work camp anywhere, he can get that exercise anywhere, but he came back to your park for 22 years, even before you owned it, because of probably the way that you treated him and how you paid him and how you valued him. So,
yeah, I think, our family prior to me being there they were very close. He had his wife and my grandmother had a very, very close relationship and stayed friends till both of them passed away. And I think that goes back to what Mark was saying about this community stuff. I think it becomes, especially in that work camper dynamic, it's almost like this family relationship. We used to all have potluck dinners on Sunday nights together and all those things. I mean, it just, it builds more than just, a bunch of people going to work every day.
well, we've got a question. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry. And then we had a question about work campers when you're done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and the work camping community is just extremely tight knit, like what Cara said. And what's interesting about these Facebook groups is they really talk to each other about each location. They ask about, well, has anybody worked at this campground or that campground? So I think it's important for park owners to realize that and to understand that, if they're using work campers, to make, to just understand that they do communicate with each other and, I don't know, try to make it the best work environment possible. I think that can help attract more work campers when you need them down the road. So,
there's something to be said for word of mouth with them for sure.
Definitely, I feel like there's a larger conversation we can have in a few minutes on the benefit side of it, right? How to attract people and how to retain them, and you can create. I do want to get to this one question about work campers, just since we were talking about it real quick. TJ Johnson says, great topic, is a very small campground. We don't have any staff. We have looked at work campers, but wonder about liability. Are there work campers that are, I guess, own their own business? So he's asking basically, I think, do we treat them as contractors or employees? My instinct is that they're contractors, but obviously I'm not a campground owner. So
in my personal experience, I did both ways. That I did have a handful of couples over the years who kind of invoice me every 2 weeks or whatever for their time based on a predetermined hiring agreement and pay agreement. And then some who were happy to kind of be on payroll and things like that. I mean, obviously my business was in a position, we were processing payroll and all of those things. I know some of our really small campground owners are not, doing that. So, but I think especially in groups like Louise's Facebook group, you could, as a campground operator, you could say, I'm specifically looking for someone on a contractual basis. These are the parameters I really need. And that would be a great way to facilitate your desired connection.
Mark, this may be different depending on what side of the border you're on. So maybe I'll jump in and ask the question or answer the question too, based on my knowledge. But how does the difference between contractor and employee work up there in Canada from just an HR background perspective?
Well, it depends. It depends which province you're in. And I think first of all, I mean, whether it's province or state, you got to look at your local regulations. In Canada, I mean, it's getting a little tighter because for years, especially in Western Canada, there were a lot of folks coming in for work programs, and they were being unpaid co-ops and unpaid this and unpaid that. And our government has cracked down on that unpaid piece. So you really can't do that anymore. However, I think work campers is a totally different area for for us up here. And I think it's important, whatever relationship you get into with this unpaid or contractual person, is having an appropriate agreement, like a documented agreement that you both sign off on. That will help alleviate some of your liability. But Canada's really cracking down a lot on sort of these unpaid things. But like many things in the campground industry, the government doesn't know what we do half the time. So I don't think they're going anywhere near work camper programs at this point. I
think it's important to preface this conversation with the fact that down here in the U.S., at least in the States, they're varying from state to state. There's different rules. I know California has some really different rules on work campers, and you can't just treat them as contracted workers in some areas. They have more rights, or you need to deal with them differently as an employer. So I think we just need to mention that, if you're kind of worried about dealing with work campers, you should talk to your state association or talk to your lawyer.
So that's why I was prepping for that question to Mark, is because, like, for us, when I started Insider Perks, the company, we did a lot of contractual workers because, to be frank, I was too small to pay payroll taxes and have that extra burden on top of my head. And so I was trying to get away with whatever I could, honestly. And so, and I'm not saying that any campground are getting away with it or doing anything wrong, but that's how I was in the beginning, right? I had to do what I had to do to survive. Now that I'm a little bit bigger, like, I want everybody to be an employee, because it gives me more flexibility to tell them what to do, to give them direction, all that kind of stuff. But it allows me to give them more benefits and stuff versus a contractual worker who, at least from my understanding down here, and in hindsight, maybe I should have had my HR person on here to talk about it. But in hindsight down here, it's pay, right? Is basically or a site or trade, but I can't really give health insurance to a contractor, things like that. So.
Right. I think in a lot of cases, they're not, if they're contracting, a benefit isn't going to be their top priority.
Right. Yes.
A lot of individuals who contract choose to do that for the benefits that come to them specifically for that. I think definitely I agreed that, looking into requirements in your area is obviously mandatory, but I think, there's ways to make sure that those agreements, cover your butt in terms of liabilities. I would get invoiced from a contractor for all of their time, and then in addition, a housing benefit on the invoice. So technically they were paying taxes on that amount and things like that. So there are ways to do it and still be compliant, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we messed that up in the beginning. I'll be the first to admit it. We didn't have contracts in place when I was new, and I didn't know what it was like. It was 2009. I didn't know what it was like to run a business. So yeah, I mean, I've ended up paying a fancy lawyer $370 an hour to write me up an independent contractor agreement, then an employee agreement, and then a NDA, and like all the things that I should have had to begin with, and I'm lucky I got away with. But
that $370, I mean, that's money well spent, because if you get into any sort of employment litigation, it's you got to get a properly documented employment agreement. You're bang on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's important. I know when we've written on this in the past, it's important for people to understand that you have to record, if you're giving them a site, you have to have the documentation for that site and how much the monetary value is, and things like that. And that's just another reason why you want to contact at least your accountant or a lawyer or somebody, just to make sure that you're doing that. I don't know what happens if the state or government finds out that you're not doing things right. I don't know if people want to find out.
A ton of bad taxes.
Yeah. So typically, they can recalculate all your tax amounts for however long back the statute is.
Yeah.
And there's implications for the individual as well. So it's really within everyone's best interest to just be compliant to those rules. It's to nobody's benefit to bend them.
Well, sorry, and I was just going to say though too, and it goes back to that your image and your impression in your community. So if you're not doing things right out of the gate, the local newspapers are always looking for the little stories about the little businesses, and they would love to put you on the front page to say, hey, did you know this campground didn't pay its employees properly, or whatever the case is. So yeah, you don't want that either.
No,
you don't.
definitely not. So I'm interested to hear from a hiring perspective, when you're thinking about putting your team together, what are like the top things that you're looking for? And maybe not just specific to campgrounds, Mark, but in general, like, I don't know, maybe that's the same logical things for all of us.
Yeah, but I think, one of the things is, and we've got a bunch of us have mentioned it, you're looking for that smile, you're looking for that personality. And even if the person is strictly a groundskeeper type person using a whippersnipper and a mower, they're going to get asked questions more than anyone. I spent some time working for Disney down in Florida, and the individuals that get the most training of all, at least at the time, in Disney, were the guys who went around and emptied all the garbage cans, because they were the ones who got stopped, who got asked for directions, what time's the parade, all that kind of stuff. So, you got to make sure that everybody on your team is focused on the customer. And I think if you look for the right people and you train them well, and don't just assume because they came from a customer service environment that they're going to know customer service, because your park is different than somebody else's park, which is different. So tell them your expectations. But yeah, look for the folks that are who've got that smile. We always walk the park during an interview process. And the individual we hired last year, it was wonderful because it was his first job ever, and I love giving people that first opportunity because, like we said earlier, they've got no preconceived ideas about what service should be or any of that. But as we walked around the park, and we were an active park at the time, this young guy, never had a job before, would wave to the campers and say, hi, how's your day going? And it was just, we didn't even need to ask him any more questions. We did. We kept going. But the way he interacted with people as you walked around the park just told us right there that was a perfect hire. So, yeah, it's about that personality and the willingness to really look after your guests the way you expect it. So,
do you include? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you include a prerequisite for customer service ability before you even, like, in your hiring criteria, as you're putting out information that you're looking for a candidate? Do you require customer service experience?
I don't require customer service experience. Require a customer service. I don't know if willingness is the right word. Right. So they may not have had direct experience, like maybe they haven't worked at Walmart or McDonald's or, these other places. But have they been part of school clubs, communities? Have they been part of Boy Scouts, Girl Guides, whatever? Like, have they got some of those skills that show they can interact with others? Because just the fact they don't have, customer service title on their resume doesn't mean they don't have the ability.
Well, so this is one of the big things with me, right? I don't even look at resumes when I hire somebody anymore. I learned that, and obviously you have to have more of a specialized tack for what some of the things that I need to hire for, but I've learned that just because you have a title on your resume doesn't mean you can actually do something the way I would prefer it to be done. And so with customer service, you're asking specifically, right? I'm more concerned that the guy's, just like Mark said, is walking around waving to people and is smiling and is happy and is outgoing and is all those kinds of things, because that intangible benefit that you can't measure on paper is worth $2, $3, $4 extra an hour, because it's going to lead to better reviews and better social comments and more happy guests and more word of mouth and more money is so.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, and this doesn't sound very HR of me, but there's 1,000 books on how to write a good resume. And you can hire somebody online to do your resume. Resumes are like maybe a foot in the door at best. It gives you their email address. That's probably the best thing you can get off a resume. It's when you meet them and when you start interacting with them. So
definitely.
I think that's one of the benefits, though, of the pandemic, right? Is more people are familiar with Zoom, and now we can interview somebody.
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, go, Louise. We're just on a lag, please.
Oh no, have we lost her again?
I think we lost her again.
For us, we do like have people.
Oh.
It's okay. I think she's just really on a lag, so we just need to give her enough time here. So we're gonna wait. Talk, Louise, anytime. We want to hear what you have to say, definitely.
I think she's frozen again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh,
I can hear you, but your video's frozen. But go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna try. Can you hear me?
yes.
We think that somebody is good. We send them a very the job. This way, they work for us, but that's where what I do because we have a store and we sell tickets to different activities that we can do around here. And we also have the maintenance. We have 2 different jobs. And the job description is very detailed. We want big if we hire them. Thing and like
I think we lost her again.
very
I think I understood
different. We don't allow music at all during the. We have to make sure that the people.
I feel like it's making this worse. I'm trying to give her time, and then every time I talk,
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, the joys of technology. But I do agree with Louise. I was
okay.
typical. My park was very similar to that too, where we had these 2 really separate teams where we had kind of our customer service, front desk, our activities staff, that side of the team. And then I had this really functional team that I was so reliant on in terms of maintaining the grounds and keeping everything pretty and clean and beautiful, and dealing with any sort of problems and plumbing and all the logistical things. So for sure, those expectations were very different depending on which team I was filling. But I'm interested too to hear about if you when I found I often, especially if I was dealing with a younger team member, we often, they would, after the fall, move on to something else. And so I was consistently giving references. I was consistently getting reference calls all the time. And it always kind of made me sad that I had to talk so often about these people that I had to lose. I was really, really lucky. But I was going to say, I think the rural location and things like that a lot of campgrounds, it wasn't specifically my issue, but I think that's a big hurdle here too, in terms of being able to access, a pool of potential candidates just when you're out kind of in the middle of nowhere. So things like the work camper agreements and stuff like that are so beneficial in that sort of location dynamic, because otherwise there's just not a lot of folks around.
It's also the competition, though, right? Too, and this kind of circles back to the benefits thing. Depending on where you are, obviously the wage that you're going to pay, whether it's mandated by law or it's optional based on what other people are paying in your area, McDonald's, gas station, whatever. That's a huge part. Yes, maybe you're in a small town, but that doesn't mean you can't raise it $2 above the person you want to hire, and they're going to come work for you if you treat them good and they give you an advice. I mean, obviously, if it's a specialized profession, it's different. If they're working in a factory already, but
I think that's more what I mean is if you're in this small town area, but you're looking for somebody who can meet a very specific set of criteria, it can be difficult to find the right fit. So that's where the work camper program is so valuable.
Yes, 100% agree with you. But then maybe you release your restrictions a little bit, like we're talking about, the looking for the customer service specialty, or looking for somebody who's worked camp before X number of years, or has RV maintenance. Maybe there's things that you can train people on relatively quickly. And so if you're having struggles with that, maybe you like let go of those restrictions a little bit.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yes. Oh, I know. Right. Yeah, I know. It took me years and years and years to do it, but also the flip side of that is you can start them at a lower rate too if they don't have that high of experience too. And as you train them, you build them. So.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. There's tons of ways to work around it. I think the work pool stuff in those smaller areas would be a huge hurdle. And I think it's a big reason why we see a lot of those kind of smaller parks typically run by, the owners, the husband and wife team or whatever, because, there's just not really anybody around to hire. Maybe they put their own kids to work or whatever, but we have a ton of campgrounds up here in those more rural locations who don't have any staff because they can't get any.
Yeah. I wish Steve, too bad Steve had to leave because I know he was going to talk about the J21 program here in the US, and I don't know what the comparative program is in Canada.
I could touch base a little bit on hiring foreign workers, foreign students. We specifically did that. I think I've mentioned here in the past that my park, we offered service in several different languages, and we had a lot of German, Dutch speaking guests. So I tried most years to bring at least one or two students from Germany or Holland over. And I think obviously those programs are heavily impacted by what's happening in the world right now. And so that's not an option, but I think it was incredibly valuable to my business. It added a ton of value to be able to, not only market directly to that target market with the rental RVs and things like that, but also, so then I was getting them in the door, but then also being able to provide them customer service in their own languages, which was super valuable. My park maybe couldn't compete with some of my direct competitors around me in terms of my location or my on-site amenities, but offering the service in their language would make them come to me instead. So the students, hiring those students was incredibly valuable, and again creates this dynamic. Some of them would come back year after year. They're in university or whatever, so they're off in the summer anyway. So they'll come hang out in Canada for the summer and work and get to check things out while they're here. I definitely recommend it. I think it's a great way to diversify your business.
And are you providing accommodation for the folks you bring over? And is that fairly common in the U.S. when you bring folks over, you need to provide accommodation, or do they have to find their own place?
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the parks here in Wisconsin, and I imagine Steve could have spoke a little bit more about this, but this was another Jellystone park in Wisconsin, and they do provide some form of lodging, or it's built in. I know one park I spoke with had facilities that the people actually stayed in, and why they were living here, and they got paid, but they also there was a cost involved for staying in the apartments or whatever that they offered too. So I forget exactly how it got split, but yeah, quite a few of them do offer housing. So
in my case, I did, Mark. We had a couple RVs on site, and that's kind of how we made that work. So it worked out nicely for them. They had a home base and a place to stay. They were close to work, didn't have to commute anywhere, but then could run off to the Rocky Mountains on their day off or whatever, right? So yeah, we did.
Yeah, Ben, we've got some clients down here that some of the larger parks, the Jellystones and stuff, who have cabins, like some of the larger cabins that seat 10, 12 people that they'll put them in, or a bunkhouse or something like that, where they'll serve them on property. So yeah, I think that's probably, I don't know if it's standard, but it's definitely something that is done frequently.
In my case, I don't know if you have to provide lodging on site, but there's parameters to make sure that they have a place to stay, but there's not a ton of requirements about how far that is from work and all those things. So, you could potentially find a local rental or something, facilitate, a place for them somehow.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't know if I don't know what it's like this year. I know last year I think a lot of the J1s they obviously couldn't come over. I don't know if they're a lot letting loosening some of that stuff this year or if it's going to be another year. I know down in the U.S. at least, a lot of the parks that do the program are larger parks, like the larger water parks that just need a ton of people for during the summer months, and the program that works really well for them to bring in people. There are smaller parks that do it as well. It's kind of a neat experience. So, and it's a good way, if you need a ton of workers, it's a good way to get those workers. And I mean, once they come over here, they work, 3 to 4 months or more while they stay here. And from everyone I've spoken with, they said that they typically are really good workers and they work well with other teammates, and it's just a great program. So,
yeah, there's something to be said for like facilitating that incredible level of not only work experience but life experience for someone who's young and starting out, or maybe changing their trajectory in life or whatever. It's incredibly rewarding. I've stayed in touch with all of my foreign students who worked with me and have watching them now grow into adults with their own businesses and jobs and doing great things. So that stuff is so rewarding. It's really great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, Ben, I just want to get back to this a couple, like the benefits, right? And where we're looking for people and how we're approaching people, because we're best hiring practices, right, is our thing. So one of the things that Louise mentioned that really stuck out to me, and maybe she was talking about this, maybe not, but she mentioned the job description. So this is super important for me. Like, I will write the job description in kind of like the tone of voice that I want somebody to be hired in. So you've got to be able to put up with my sense of humor and my sarcasm a little bit and my joking around and all that kind of stuff. And so, like, when we're hiring somebody right now, the title of the job description is Marketing Superhero. Because you got to have a sense of humor. If you can't laugh at Marketing Superhero and read through that job description and be amused and still apply, then you're probably not a good fit for the company. You might be a good worker, but you're just not a good fit for what I'm looking for. And so writing that job description, not just in the tone of voice, but laying out exactly what the requirements are, gives people a feeling for, do I really want to apply for this too, and helps you weed out some of that to get to in the beginning.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I think the job descriptions, again, that's the face you're putting forward to everybody. And I love that, Brian. Like, I think that's, something I'll use going forward, because we did put, campground attendant, because that's the classification, the job code in Canada that allows us to apply for grants. But, say campground superhero would be phenomenal. But I mean, you have to be clear and transparent too. Like, hey, we're going to be fun, but you're also going to clean washrooms a whole lot. Yeah, so,
there's some tough stuff here to deal with. Yeah,
but that's the detailed, like, I mean, it's the eye-catching, like, you want to apply for that or you don't. You want to have fun or you don't. And so, just like, we'll get into we have a whole other show on my employee handbook. We could talk about that. You guys might like that. But anyway, so Leslie was bringing up here too in the comments. She said, for benefits, they have a health spending account that some returning staff can access. They use an outside provider for this service. And so what are some of the things that Mark and Cara and Louise, if we can get our audio working correctly, you guys have used at your parks kind of as those extra benefits on top of the pay?
Well, I'll go. Like, for us, I'm not going to say there was no extras. I mean, there was their compensation, their hourly wage, but there was no health care spending account. I think that's a great idea. And it depends on the size of your park too. I mean, you could look at things we've used or I've used in the past are things like referral bonuses. So you could do, if you recommend a friend and they get hired, and if over the first 30 days they turn out to be a great employee, then that other employee gets a bonus. So you can do some stuff like that. But for us, I mean, it's really about the the experience, the environment they're working in, because there's no way we're going to compete. Like, again, the employers in town, Starbucks, Walmart's, McDonald's, they have great programs. We're never going to compete with them on that. But where I can compete is providing a fun environment where they're going to get to do a little bit of everything. You know, they're going to have, they're going to see me dressed up as Batman for the Halloween weekend. They're going to know they're part of a great employer.
Wait, that's a thing? I want to come to your park now.
Oh, yeah. Halloween in August. It's the best. It's my favorite weekend. But, you know, that's the kind of thing we can provide. And I mean, to some people, they're about the money, and that's fine. If you're looking for $15 an hour plus benefits, you're not going to work here. But if you want a place where you can work outside in the sun, you know, you can do some, you know, customer service, you can do some yard work. You know, if it's a rough day, you can just kind of hide out and split some wood. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we can provide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's typically a really repetitive thing I found is I always ended up with a certain type of individual who is looking for kind of more of a broad experience thing they could put on a resume going forward. Or, you know, somebody who, like Louise mentioned, maybe has finished their work life, but is, you know, wants to fill some part-time with, you know, interaction with individuals, or, you know, getting to work in the gardens, things like that. Like, there's this extra lifestyle enhancement stuff that comes with this type of job that you don't see potentially in, you know, going to work at McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever. So I think that's a big factor that a lot of people, I got that feedback over and over from staff was, you know, it's different every day. I get to be creative. I like getting to hang out with all the kids at the mini golf every day, and things like that were really enticing. We didn't, like I said, we didn't have a benefits program specifically at Mountain View, mostly because of our seasonality. But we did things like, you know, we had great staff events a couple of times a year and took the staff for team building, fun stuff, or had cool stuff come to the park. Like, we had, you know, a paintball thing set up at the park for the team to kind of take each other's frustrations out on each other or whatever. So we, you know, like I said, I think that all relates back to that lifestyle stuff.
Right. So, but this is the reason I brought it up, is because what you're talking about is benefits.
I agree. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, like, I found when I got started my company and I started talking to campgrounds, like, when you hear full-time plus benefits, the first thing that comes to people's mind is $600 a month health insurance. At least here it is. Mm-hmm. And that's all they think about. But when you can have free benefits like what you're talking about, where employees get engaged together, where they have, you know, free tickets to a show that's nearby, or free gift cards to dinner, or free gas to get to and from to work, or, you know, perks that you can offer, just like you were talking about, activities around the campground that don't cost you any money. Mm-hmm. There are ways that you can provide those benefits without spending too much. You know, we have a employer assistance program that costs me a couple $100 a year that allows people to call for a couple free hours of counseling and mental health and, you know, accountant advice and legal advice and things like that. It's a drop in the bucket for me. People love it. We've got a QSERA plan down here. I don't know if it's probably not a thing the same way up in Canada, but it's a way for me to offer a contribution or basically a X number of dollars a month credit for people to purchase health insurance that doesn't require me to buy the $600 a month plan. Mm-hmm. And so it's flexible. I can give them, you know, they have to have insurance, but then they can use a credit for either the health insurance bill if they submit it, or like Leslie was saying, kind of like a flex spending account. They can use it for anything that they want. You know, 401ks that require minimal contributions, just little things that go far and above away what you think they cost. It will make these employees happy and help you stand out apart from other people.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think, like I said, a lot of those benefits kind of step outside the box of some of those bigger corporate companies who have these pretty square, you know, policed plans for hiring and staffing and employment and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the benefits of being a small business like this, is you can get really creative about what you're offering and don't have to follow this regimented policy idea of what a benefit is.
And it comes back full circle, though, to this job description, right? That's basically a marketing piece.
Yeah.
And so if you can sit down and think about some of these benefits that maybe you experience every day as the campground owner, but are really special, or you're creating unique, like Cara was saying with the team building activities or things that they could use on the campground, put these into your job description, and they'll really help you stand out and attract more talent too. Think of that as the first front-facing piece to attract that person and bring them in.
Well, and it goes back to that word of mouth stuff you were saying too. So if I have a team this year and they loved working here, they're gonna, let their buddies know, and then maybe next spring, you have access to more of a hiring pool. So that's all interconnected for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think on the teenager side too, I mean, if you guys have, if you have amenities like mini golf or pools and things like that, and you give them the chance to come in and maybe use that when they're not working, I think that could be great too. So
yeah, absolutely.
And allowing their families too. I mean, to allow them to bring in, with some restrictions, but to say, hey, listen, you want to bring your parents in and come for a swim, and first of all, your employee is so excited to show off their job to their mom, so allowing, extending it beyond just the employee too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, these are things that cost you very little, if anything at all. So, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything unless somebody swim in the pool. So,
right. Yeah.
I think some of the more successful parks I've seen that keep employees also offer like the educational component. So like kind of like what Steve was talking about, only they offer ways for them to get connected to the industry, maybe a little more. There are tons of programs out there for hospitality, and there's tons of people that love to work in the hospitality field. So maybe connecting teenagers and like college students with those kind of opportunities that maybe will make them like rethink their career choice, and maybe stick with you or get involved in the broader industry.
Well, and I think it's very enticing to, again, in that job description or your hiring outlines to say, I often had applicants from our local tech institute that has a tourism certification program. And so they, in their off months or whatever, wanted to come work with me to build out their resume. Or, I had applications for internships that were part of their required certification training and things like that. So there's ways to get creative with this stuff, even not necessarily if those schools are right near you. If you're able to, get somebody to get a potential employee to come out to wherever you are for the summer or whatever, similar to those European kids that were working for me. Those are great opportunities because it's so mutually beneficial. They're really building out their experience level in their resume. And it's obviously, an industry that they're really interested in and want to be there, which is such a huge factor when you're hiring, is finding folks who want to show up every day.
Yeah, training is a huge portion of it, and it helps. The side benefit of that is it helps you kind of uncover the employees who really want to be there and really want to grow their career and really are go-getters too, to then later make sure that you keep those people. Like here, it's default. Every employee here gets a LinkedIn Learning subscription that the company pays for, and they're told that they can spend as many hours of whatever day they want to, X number of hours per week that the company will pay above and beyond on whatever you want, including, and you can use it for things that are not company related too. I don't care. If you want to teach yourself how to do something that's related to business that you're never going to use here, fine, use your subscription and do it. They're told that they can go on Amazon and they can buy any book they want with their company card that they can justify with like any kind of ties loosely, right, to their job description or anything that they do here. They can purchase a training book or a nonfiction book or something that helps them learn and grow their careers. So yeah, training is huge.
Absolutely.
I guess go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to just touch back. Cara mentioned your community colleges, or your local universities. I don't think we've touched on them enough because they're such a valuable partner in your community. If they've got a comparable program, or not even necessarily a comparable program, they could be from any program. But going to the college job fairs, and if you've got a student from that college, take them with you to that job fair and have them stand beside you and talk about the experience. But I got to the point in my past life where worked so well with the local college that their co-op office, who their job is to find jobs for their students, would call me up and say, "Hey, listen, I've got the number one student in this class. Would you be interested in meeting them?" So now you've got folks looking for people for you. So colleges are just invaluable.
Which is your reputation too, and your standing in the community, and it's all full circle. All this stuff ties together.
You bet.
Yeah. I guess I just kind of wanted to touch base on areas where people might find employees. I know this is an area where I think we touched on a little bit, but are there like job posting boards and different places where people go to post their jobs to put, so they can find employees, I guess, just online?
Well,
I know we talked a little bit about the community, like getting involved with the community and public schools, but I know the National Association of RV Parks and Campgrounds is working on a job board. I guess, what has worked well for you guys, I guess, as far as posting your jobs?
I was always kind of shocked at the efficacy of Facebook to find potential candidates. I could easily post requirements. Hey, we're hiring. We're looking for somebody who has these things. And I'd get, 25 responses or whatever. So that was great. The Facebook groups as well. I think, I just joined Louise's group and have been kind of poking around in there. And I think, that's a great way to specifically connect folks who are searching for those positions with people who have those positions to fill. There's lots of great tools, great free tools available. But then, I think up here, I don't know what the logistics are in the States or what options there are, but I often posted for some of my higher, like I was looking for a kind of a team manager or whatever. So I did post that on a couple of the job boards at Indeed and things like that. Just because I was looking for somebody with a bit more specific requirements. But Facebook always worked wonders for me. But honestly, word of mouth was a big, big thing for us.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it all depends on who you're looking for, right? I mean, obviously, the work camper group is great, both Louise's and down here. There are work camping groups down here that I'm sure, Ben, you can give a couple in a second, just let people know they exist. But if you're looking for work campers, those are good. If you're looking for local workers, then Facebook is probably a good tool. But boost that post on Facebook to people who are local, who may not already be liking your park, and expand your reach. You spend $5-10 to do that and get a lot of more applicants than you would normally. And then again, targeted job boards, right? Yes, Indeed, Glassdoor, those kinds of things. Most of them, I think Glassdoor actually owns Indeed now, but anyway. There's free job listings on some of those sites. And again, it all goes back to how you're writing and how you're presenting yourself. That's a lot of standing out against everybody else who's hiring against you too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you also don't forget your local Chamber of Commerce, your local tourism board. There's always local employment offices. So there's a lot of local places. But yeah, I agree with Cara. Facebook, like they're your fans already. They've already invested in your brand. They've clicked that like button, so they already like you. Facebook's awesome for that.
If you're hiring college kids, go to your local pizza place and put an ad on the pizza box. Creative.
Yeah, there's definitely ways to be creative. I think the hurdle sometimes with stuff like that is, again, the seasonality. So, you start planning and getting your team together in February or March, and then it can be tough to get things like that orchestrated in time or deliverables in time when you're talking things like that. But there's so many factors. I agree. It needs to be really targeted to exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Brian, I guess, do you have any more comments or?
I think the only other thing that I wanted to touch on briefly, and maybe Mark can help with us with this just from an HR standpoint, is it's called best hiring practices. I don't know, obviously each individual person was expecting to get something different from the show, and I don't know what that is. But are there some best practices, Mark, from an HR perspective that help you kind of streamline the hiring process?
Well, it does go back to that job description. I think that's your first point of interaction with the folks. I see a comment up in the feed there from Leslie. She says, we've used meet world travelers and clean up after them in her job hiring ads.
Yes.
And that's I love that. That's perfect because you're setting the stage right there. You know what? If you've got an opportunity to do some phone interviews, some phone screens, some Zoom screens, that's excellent. Again, I'm not a huge fan of resumes, but they're sort of a necessary evil. But just try and get your pool down to as few as possible. And I don't think that can come from paper. That comes from meeting or interacting with them. So it's a little different. Like if you're like the other gentleman who's hiring 400 people, you don't have a chance to be as choosy. Cara mentioned how she was able to be a little more, particular about who she brings aboard. But take the time, invest the time. It'll save you in the long run. Finding that right person now means you're not having to rehire somebody in August because they didn't work out, that sort of thing. So put whatever effort in, start early, be really clear in the expectations with the candidates and just say, hey, listen, I'm going to clean toilets. You're going to clean toilets. Are you okay with that? And most of them will say yes in an interview, but some of them might choose to opt out. Just take the time. It's worth every minute you put into it.
But
Well, one of the, and it's a little bit off topic, but what you just said, Mark, I'm going to clean toilets, and so are you. So as the boss, be willing to do anything that you're going to ask your employees to do, and that's a huge example, and we'll get them to do a lot more things than they otherwise would.
yeah, and I think that stuff has to be demonstrated. I mean, I definitely know in the first weeks of my team coming together, I can feel that 12 or 15 individuals testing me just as much as I'm testing them, right? We're checking each other out and seeing who's going to really step up to the plate and do what they say they're going to do. And sometimes, you do get to May or June and somebody's doesn't work or whatever. And that's another benefit to having, only being able to be more choosy, but then having more applicants than you hire, because then you can go back to that list and pick somebody better or better fitting for the role. So I think as much as we put expectations on our new hires, we also have to kind of walk the walk too.
Yeah, and I think just to that point, Cara, how you say no to people who've applied for you is equally as important as how you say yes.
Yeah.
Because again, they're likely a customer of yours. So if you end your interview relationship with them on a good high note, hey, listen, it didn't work out this time. Really liked these skills you had. Love to talk to you again in the future. They walk away feeling respected. And then if you lose somebody in the summer, you give those folks a call. Maybe they found another job, but you know what? They might be like, I've been waiting all summer to hear from you.
Yeah. I've had to call somebody a couple months later and be like, hey, a spot opened up on the team and your interview was so great. And, I really want to offer you this spot kind of thing. It's incredibly valuable that, we ended the first interview round on a really high note so that I could go back there with the kind of door open.
Same thing goes with the people you let go from your campground or business too. It's, and how you treat them instead of stringing them along for months and trying to force something that's clearly not working. Let them go nicely, but fire them quickly. Hiring is guessing, firing is knowing.
Yeah.
So it's not that you have, just because you fire somebody, you have to be mean about it. You can say, hey, be upfront, do it really quick and say, look, this isn't working out. I feel like there's probably a better opportunity for you somewhere. Let me introduce you to this person in the community because I've got a great relationship with them and maybe this is a better fit for you, and help them.
Yeah.
And then that goes, again, back to your reputation, your word of mouth, what the community thinks of you, more people who are coming, banging down your doors trying to work for you. So.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think we tackled a lot of good stuff today. So on the hiring side of things, I think we got through to a lot of issues that some of the people, some of the owners we talk with speak about. So it's been great.
Yeah, I'm super looking forward to 2021. I think, all the campground owners I've been speaking with in the last month or so are really, really positive and looking forward to a great summer. And I think that's bodes well for, us building lots of teams and getting lots of people out to work. And all of that. So I'm excited to see how the year goes.
Cara, while we're wrapping up here, can you put Luisa's group in the chat, and then I can put it up on screen just because we're having problems with their audio? Do you know it?
I tried to put it in the group chat and it didn't work. So I've got it in the private. I don't have that. I can't see the group chat at all, but I've got it in the private.
If you put it on Woodall's Facebook page, it'll show up in the chat. It has to be on one of the pages, though. It can't be on one of the groups.
Yeah, here, I can put it up. I have it already, so I can't see the Facebook feed this week. Like
last week.
Yeah, like in weeks past. So, but anyway, so I just put the Facebook group up, Canadian Work Campers. So and the just like the
thank you.
Just like the regular work environment, Work Campers is getting pretty competitive too. I mean, Amazon has such a huge work camper program down here in the U.S., and I don't know if they do stuff up in Canada, but there's other companies that are utilizing work campers too, which has been putting a lot of pressure on that sector as well. So
with the way RVing and RV lifestyle and all that stuff is going, and with so many people doing it, those companies are super smart to utilize that workforce.
Yeah, I mean, I know Amazon and KOA has a huge program too of work campers, but I know Amazon has they utilize work campers. They have a whole Facebook page, a website, and they utilize tons of them to do like packaging and different things, work in warehouses. So that's been kind of changing the game for work campers too, down here in the U.S. at least. So it's been
so interesting.
So
one of the other things I will bring up real quickly too, just briefly, is best hiring practices, right? Is making the onboarding process for yourself as easy as you possibly can. Save yourself some time. So this is not applicable to every campground owner out there, but for instance, I've got HR software that costs me like $120 a month US, and it allows me to organize everybody, post jobs to Indeed and Glassdoor, accept applications, start the onboarding process, send them email follow-ups automatically, all that kind of stuff. It's not that hard to set up. It takes a week or two, but then the time that it saves me is huge. I've got, people can track their own time, clock in and clock out for the hourly workers I have. A lot of them are salary, but using an app on their phone, you can put the schedules in there and you can recur the schedules every week if you need to vary them or whatever else. So just things that save you time can help you make that process more efficient and take some stress off if you do.
Yeah, I think if you can find ways, because I know with a lot of these jobs too, it's on the job training once they get there with their reservation software and learning practices for what you guys do at the park and different things, finding ways to streamline that as well, because obviously it can get you have other work to focus on, and it can get a little burdensome having to train and do the other things you need to do. So finding a way to streamline that's probably best too. So
what would be fantastic, and I just thought about this, like CampSpot or ResNexus or RMS, like here's $50, $75 one time. We're going to create a training program or a video that they can watch to learn the software.
Most of them do. Most of them include,
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, most of them include all the ones that I've demoed, which is quite a few. Include free training. Most of them do like live internet, like a Zoom call, similar setup with a team or a video call or whatever. But then, they provide all kinds of training videos, training manuals, software, all of that stuff to facilitate, getting your team orchestrated. And that stuff is helpful too, because then you can kind of send your potential staff a link to review before they come in for their training session. Yes. You're not starting at zero. Those tools exist and definitely should be utilized.
Yeah, I didn't know about I assumed, the help documents and stuff, but I meant more like a live Zoom call training, like a group thing where, once every 2 weeks you can get together and everybody from CampSpot who needs to be trained for employees all across the country can join in, for example.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because parks are also different, they typically really individualize them. So, for me, in my case, my software company called, we spent, 5 days. We had an hour or 2 hour call every day for 5 days or whatever, and went over all the things, and there was time for Q&A and all of that stuff, specifically one-on-one, with my team, which was incredibly valuable.
Oh yeah, obviously that's way better if they'll do it for you. I just didn't know if everybody did that. So
yeah. So all right, well, I think it was great. I think next week we're doing agritourism. We're going to focus on farms and animals, and I think I've already got a campground signed up that offers llamas. They do llama farming. So, and the llamas like go in between RVs and stuff. They just peruse the campground. So
what about alpacas? That's the only thing we care about.
Can they mow my? Do they mow my lawns?
Yeah.
That's one of the questions we're going to have to ask this owner, is if they help keep the sites like mow.
I didn't have llamas, but I had goats, and they definitely did the job. Yes.
This was one of the most fascinating. So like we, there's Farm Stay USA, which offers like camping packages at actual farms, like kind of like the group we had on last week, Brian. I can't remember the name of Harvest Host, yeah. Only they do it at like working farms, and you can actually participate in activities. But this was actually a campground that is a farm. So they have like a whole campground, I think 100 sites or more, and they have like a farm that's incorporated into the campground. So it's kind of really neat, and so it should be really fun talking with them next week. They come from Tennessee, so that should be fun. So
I want to know how they balance all that stuff, because I remember going to a campground when we were first starting out, like we were on the road all the time because we didn't have enough money for an office and all that, and plus we wanted to be on the road. But I remember being woken up by a donkey at like 3 o'clock in the morning who wouldn't stop making noise, and so yeah.
I mean, it'll be great talking with them and just getting a feel for what they do. And they do gardening, and they offer chances for campers they offer like packages where campers can get involved with the farm and RVs. So, but anyways, thanks Mark and Louise, and Steve, if you listen to this podcast, thanks for coming on for a little bit, and we hope that the viewers got some good value out of this. So,
absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming, Mark, Cara, always, Ben, as always.
Yeah.
Louise, send us information on your work camping group. We want to put it on all the pages too. We'll make sure it gets posted everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, both of you. I appreciate your time so much.
Yeah, we all do. So, everyone have a good week.